my name is Kara, and I consider it a special honor when I get to share with you in this sort of format instead of just music. So thank you for being my listeners today. Some of you know I am a songwriter, and as an artist, which I'm sure there are several here, you also know that you never know when inspiration will hit you. And for this one time, I was hanging out with a group of friends. We were in a circle and just going around and answering the tough questions, how are you really? And in the middle of people sharing, lyrical gold hit my head, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I instantly became a really horrible listener and ended up in the middle of conversation being like, guys, I think I'm going to write a song about this lyric that just popped in my head. It's going to be great. Oh, my goodness. So they looked back at me excitedly and said, oh, okay, what is it? And I said, the line is, nobody said it was easy, but no one ever said it'd be this hard. Does anyone know what song that is? Yep, it's Coldplay. So I was met with laughter and chuckles back, and needless to say, I was super embarrassed and did not write a song with that lyric line, thank you, Coldplay. But I've found that lyric line, and then probably that's why it came to my head, nobody said it was easy, but nobody ever said it would be this hard. That lyric line has been true about several areas of my life, and one of those is understanding God. Even within this past week, I found myself longing and hoping to land on some sort of certainty in my life for clear explanations. There have been so many everyday moments where I internally say, just tell me how it is, God. Tell me what I should do here. Sometimes God does say things really clearly, but I'm over here kind of like, why can't that be every time? Why doesn't God have this light up neon light pointing, screaming, this is the way? Am I the only one here who feels like communication at times can feel like it's spiritually cryptic, or like I need to decode possible signs from God, or struggle in the midst of what feels like silence? It turns out the disciples, Jesus' closest friends and followers, also felt this way at times, also asked these questions. So for those of you who are new, our community here, we've been doing a summer series called Parables. Parables are stories. And parables specifically were a set of stories recorded in the New Testament, stories that Jesus told to crowds that were metaphorical or allegorical, and they conveyed spiritual truths. So we're about halfway through the summer, and I was looking through the list of parables that we could choose from, and instead of choosing one of the stories, I was like, why? Why parables? Which actually ended up being an option I could choose. So I chose the why parables. Why does Jesus use parables? Why are there parables? So today we're going to pick back up reading from the book of Matthew, chapter 13. I printed out only part of this text. I'm going to start reading from the very beginning. But I printed out verses 10 through 17 because I think it's a specific part that will help during our discussion time later. And I'm going to start reading at the top of the chapter because I think it'll help give us better context in our conversation. So hang with me for a minute. I'll let you know when I get to that printed part so you can join with me. Here we go. Matthew 13. Later that day, Jesus left the house and sat by the lakeshore to teach the people. Soon, there were so many people surrounding him that he had to teach sitting in a boat while the large crowd stood on the shore. He taught them many things by using stories, parables to illustrate spiritual truths, saying, "Consider this. There was a farmer who went out to sow seeds. He cast his seeds. Some fell along the beaten path, and the birds came and ate them. Others fell onto gravel that had no topsoil. They quickly shot up, but when the days grew hot, they were scorched and withered because they had insufficient roots. Others fell among the thorns. So when they sprouted, the thorns choked them. But other seeds fell on good soil, rich soil that kept producing a good harvest. Some yielded 30, some 60, and some even 100 times as much as he planted. If you're able to understand this, then you need to respond. Okay, here we are at verse 10 now. Join me. Then his disciples approached Jesus and asked, "Why do you always speak to people in these hard-to-understand parables?" That's our question. That's the question right there. Why do you always speak to people in these hard-to-understand parables? Jesus explained then to his disciples, his close followers, "You've been given the intimate experience of insight into the hidden mysteries of the realm of heaven's kingdom. But they have not. For everyone who listens with an open heart will receive progressively more revelation until he has more than enough. But those who don't listen with an open, teachable heart, even the understanding that they think they have will be taken from them." That's why I teach the people using parables, because they think they're looking for truth, yet because their hearts are unteachable, they never discover it. Although they will listen to me, they never fully perceive the message I speak. The prophecy of Isaiah describes them perfectly. Although they listen carefully to everything I speak, they don't understand a thing I say. They look and pretend to see, but the eyes of their hearts are closed. Their minds are dull and slow to perceive. Their ears are plugged and hard of hearing. And they have deliberately shut their eyes to the truth. Otherwise, they would open their eyes to see, and open their ears to hear, and open their minds to understand. Then they would turn to me, and I would instantly heal them. But blissful are your eyes, for they see. Delighted are your ears, for they are open to hear all these things. Many prophets and godly people yearned to see these days of miracles that you've been favored to see. They would have given everything to hear the revelation you've been favored to hear. All right, I'm going to stop for a second here. After reading this, I'm going to have you turn just to a few people next to you, and I want you to answer the question. Answer, why do you think Jesus spoke in parables? Or what's sticking out to you from this text? What kinds of questions do you have? We're just going to take a few minutes to do this, so pick a few people and have a little conversation, and I'll bring us back in just a few minutes. Okay. Just quick here, what stuck out at your group? Was there anything that someone said that you thought was pretty neat, or what kinds of conversations we're having in this room? Feel free to share. Yep, in the back. More relatable? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, stories are a bit more timeless and that's cool. Thank you, Cody. Yeah, I really like that. Did everyone hear that? No? Yeah. Just that sharing stories kind of opens more of an invitation into conversation instead of a declarative statement. So the nature of a story being open for many audiences, many ears. Yes, George in the back? That's a story, yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yes, JJ? Yeah, that's cool that you can pull from your experience like that. So in all the things that was just read, and kind of I'm sure what's happened around your table here too, I kind of wanted to focus in on one idea here, and that was the theme of having an open heart. And I saw this, like the specific text I'm looking at is verse 12. For everyone who listens with an open heart will receive progressively more revelation until he has more than enough. And then in other places throughout the rest of that scripture, there's a lot of references of open your mind or your ears, but this open heart posture. And so when I kind of landed on that in my head, I was like, well, what is an open heart? Like, what is that? I'm currently living and renting with my sister and brother-in-law. and my 2 nephews who are 8 years old and 4 years old. And when thinking about what is an open heart, my mind immediately shot to the scene of our daily dinner time and the battle it is to get kids to eat different foods. This last week, I was so excited. I was like, I think I hacked the hard eater kid club. And I was so excited because I decided to make this childhood staple my mom would make for us when I grew up. It's taking a crescent roll and you put a little bit of mustard on it and then like a couple deli slices with some Swiss cheese and you roll it up. I call it simple person's cordon bleu. And I thought for sure both boys were going to love this because even the pickiest eaters at our house growing up, it was a winner. But any parent here knows where this is going. And because try as I might, the 8-year-old said he didn't like it, even before he tried it. Yep. So we said to him, hey, this is literally all the things you like. Bread, meat, cheese. But you see, my 8-year-old nephew, he did not have, what did he not have? He did not have an open heart. Very clever, Kara, yep. He had decided before even trying it what it was going to taste like. And he was definitely not going to like it. And because of this preset idea, when he did actually eat it, he still had an incredibly hard time admitting that he might possibly like it. From this silly story, I'm just reminded of a few truths about what an open heart looks like. It kind of requires us to embrace surrender and lean into trust. An open heart does not determine how something is going to be before it's done. An open heart requires being brave in the midst of the unfamiliar or even the perceived familiar. Are you open to having different outcomes with the pieces you've been given? Of course, talking about food, and especially cheese, is easier than maybe like daily spiritual application. But maybe this is a little bit of my parable in a way. And to follow the food story, if you have a hard time, like me, stepping outside of your perceived certainty, maybe in those moments, asking questions to better understand. Like, what would have been if my nephew would have said before deciding, what would happen if he'd asked, what is this food? Or even stating facts like, this looks lumpy and weird to me, and I've never seen something like that. Leaning into trust, which also involves acknowledging your fears, identifying past experiences and the lenses you bring. He could have said, I don't have a good track record, Auntie, with lumpy, weird food, and I'm afraid it's going to be just like those other times. But an open heart is a posture that embraces surrender and leans into trust. So besides parables, why is it so important to have open hearts in understanding with God? And why did Jesus often choose this way to communicate to crowds? Here's Kara's hot take. A little side of it, because in my struggle in communication with God, I found it helpful in those times to center back to the truths of who God is. And one of those truths being that God is our infinite and beautiful creator who made us, who made me, who made you, made this park, and no one is the same as us. No one, or ever has been. So if we are all uniquely and specially made different, why wouldn't God use a way like metaphorical stories to draw the larger pieces, kind of like how you said, Dan? Why wouldn't God go outside the norm to meet you? I've noticed that also similarly as like a songwriter, I can share a song that I've written, and several people will come up afterwards, and they all have a different retelling of their experience, a different way of understanding, a different way of how that meant to them. Also, okay, yada yada. I have all these notes. This is the fun part, right? Fast forward. I'm going to skip this part. I'm going to go, you know what? I just feel, yeah. So I'm going to close with a story. This last week, at the spur of the moment, I went to a worship night at a friend's church. And in that service, they had provided paper and a pen for an activity that was going to happen during that service. It got to that point, and I got to be honest, I was in a cynical headspace because I've done that sort of thing before, and right there in the moment, it just kind of felt like, what could I possibly glean from this experience? That I can't just do just thinking where I am. And did I really want to use my energy like that? Yes, we can laugh. I thought writing something down would expend too much energy. Oh, man. As I listened to the worship leader, though, she said, this paper is provided for you to listen and write whatever comes to your mind. Or you can just draw whatever comes to your mind. It doesn't have to make sense, just do it. So I reluctantly grabbed my paper and pen and went to the back of the room, arguing in my head about participating. I thought, what's in my head? What's popping up? What's screaming inside of me today? It was this phrase. It was, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I argued in my head, well, see, I have a phrase. Why do I need to write that down? What am I doing? But I sensed a nudge in my spirit to just do it, Kara, to just write it down, to embrace that surrender and lean into trust. So I did. And when I saw those words written in front of me, what am I doing? Something shifted. Not just my head, but my whole being was now a part of this listening journey. And I heard in my head, like as a response from God, and it was, what am I doing? And I did chuckle in the back of the church because I was like, that's the same words that I wrote, but you just kind of, but that was exactly what I needed to hear, to stop in the middle of the busyness in my head, impatient because I felt flooded with all the ways that I felt like I'd been falling short or not measuring up. And God reminded me in that moment that I didn't need to have all the answers, that I wasn't expected to have all the answers, and to stop and embrace and ask God to see what God is doing. That may not have been like a step-by-step answer that I was looking for, or like some here's the step process to your next track of success. But it was in the middle of my fatigue and sarcasm and grumpiness, a reluctant spirit, my callous heart still remained a fraction open, and I felt met by God. So my invitation to you is to take on a posture, an open heart posture to God this week, to embrace surrender and lean into trust. Yeah. So I'm going to pray here, and we're going to spend a little time around our tables here in a second too, but let me just pray to finish this. God, thank you for your creation, every person, being, plants, every day. But God, I pray boldly that you would meet these people here who are hearing today, that as we go about our week, that we would see and hear and know you clearly in our midst. God, help us to have open hearts. Help us to embrace surrender and to lean into you. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear you. In Jesus' name, amen. So now we'll spend a few minutes, again, with a few people, and we're just going to share, what's something that stuck out to you from this time together, from the story, from the sharing, what questions do you have. Maybe you can even ask the question, what's one thing I can do to try to have an open heart posture this week in my life? So we'll give you a few more minutes, and then Allison will come up to close us out. Thank you.